brought to you by Great World Productions. I'm your host, Isaac Hedges, joined once again by co-host Jacob Fulmer. Jake, what in the world are we looking at tonight?
Well, this week here on our What in the World Wednesdays, we're going to be starting our new topic for the new month of March, which is philosophy and big ideas. And so these are going to be some really big questions.
Absolutely. So, reckon we ought to get into it. Of course, this is following our first series of What in the World, as our longtime viewers know. Of course, all available for playback on our channel if you missed it out. Again, that first series being Human Nature and Psychology, I believe, wasn't it, Jake?
Yes, that was our first series that we did back in February. And now, here in the month of March, we are going to continue the series with our newest section of questions, which is philosophy and big ideas. So, let's go ahead and look at the first couple of questions this week on What in the World. Here is our first question. What does it mean to live a good life? Isaac, any opening thoughts?
Yeah, sure. That's a great. Excuse me, Jake. That is a great question. You'll have to pardon me. Slipped up a little bit there. What does it mean to live a good life? Well, that is indeed a great question. I do indeed know how to say that word, not to be fooled, folks. So, what does it mean? Well, in terms of that, it would seem perhaps more controversial than it used to be to say something like this, Jake. But put simply, say you and I were created for a purpose to uh, do things. Again, naturally, human beings, we are social creatures, we are coupling creatures, and naturally have motivations, ambitions to do big things. And again, naturally, we have free will. We've got the freedom to certainly, as we're supposed to, do good and avoid evil, though it doesn't always shake out that way. Again, some people choose to do the opposite, but again, in terms of that, makes sense in terms of living a good life. So certainly the desire is there. It would seem certainly very common in humans, somewhat standard. Now, in terms of what it means to live a good life, again, you may get a number of different answers for this. I would say, again, kind of to the central question there. Of course, we talked about what it's all about: do good, avoid evil. Of course, uh, it's important to do that. So, broadly speaking, sort of benefiting the greater good, as it were, benefiting other people and different things in your work, whatever may be your vocation. Again, sort of finding some purpose in that, belonging to something bigger than yourself, and again benefiting other people. I'd say that is the biggest part of it. Certainly, a big part of that naturally is family. That always occurs in terms of whenever we have a birth or a death. That's something that the family is present, and naturally, it makes it all the more worthwhile. I would say whenever you've got a large family to share it with. So again, I'd say that's another important point. Does that answer your question, Jake?
Yeah, I think so. I think that does really kind of bring perspective uh, to the question here, to the prompt. And I guess if I were to answer it for myself, what does it mean to live a good life? Well, I think it's all about perception. Do you feel like that you are living a good life, or do you feel like that you're dragging yourself just to get from one place to another? I feel like that we have to enjoy life, but part of enjoying life is also making sure that we accomplish things in life as well. And so I think that's really where it comes into play.
Right, absolutely. As we mentioned in our past season, previous questions on what in the world, and similar pattern here, of course. But as we know, there's a season for all things, and naturally, if all of those seasons were exactly the same, if we were doing those things just all the time, why they would lose their meaning. And so that's why, for example, we have times of the year for feast, times of the year for fast. Again, an important distinction to make there. And here again, it is a similar thing, and it would be easy to fall into complacency, it would seem, on that front in terms of just the day to day getting stuck in these sort of things and not really realizing it, not really taking things for all their worth. Certainly, all of us probably at some point. I know I've been guilty of this at times, just sort of going through the motions and not thinking about things a great deal. Perhaps taking a great many of our blessings for granted. Jake?
Yeah, I think so. And so I think in order to live a good life, I think we have to ensure that we're not taking these things for granted and that we're acknowledging the really great parts about life, or we're going to continue to be kind of down in the dumps, I guess you could say. And then when we're down in the dumps, we're not living a good life because we're in the negative state of mind. And so that doesn't mean that we can totally ignore reality, but we have to do so in a way that's positive and uplifting, but also keeps us grounded. And so I think that kind of covers that question, some of the high points. And so we'll move into the second and final question for this week's edition of What in the World. Question number two is this: is free will real or an illusion?
Well, that's a great question, Jake. And again, a number of theories of this sort, certainly that we've covered in the past. In fact, we've got certainly multiple episodes, actually, I believe, a couple dedicated to it. That is on the matter of conspiracy theories. There are a number of those. If you have any interest in that, you can always check out that video on our YouTube channel for playback. Now, in terms of the question, here is free will real or an illusion? Well, there are a number of theories of conspiracies that, again, could exist as to whether we're really living in a simulation, we really have no control over it, whether we're controlled by a shadowy cabal of elites. Again, a number of theories surrounding that. It doesn't seem, certainly to my observation, that any of them offer a great deal of evidence. So, Jake, I would say that yes, free will is real. And again, there are those that would take the more fatalist school of thought again that all things in life are predestined, that tragedies, that things happen to us rather than us doing things. Certainly, that school of thought does exist and perhaps is somewhat prevalent this day and age. Now, in terms of what degree of merit it holds, how realistic actually is it that things are this way in reality? In actuality, I'd say that that's another question entirely, even if many people believe it. Again, it is possible for 50,000 Frenchmen to be wrong about something. I do believe that free will is real. As you might have caught in the previous question, I mentioned, of course, one that I said, of course, it's sort of our role, one of our big goals here is to do good and avoid evil, broadly speaking. And that statement, of course, presupposes that we have free will to choose between those. Jake, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that pretty well summarizes it. And I would say that the answer is yes. I think we have free will to pretty much do what we want to. I guess if you were to look at it from that sort of standpoint, I mean, it's not necessarily an illusion. It's not necessarily a false reality. Obviously, there's things that we should do and shouldn't do, but that doesn't necessarily limit us from doing those things. It's more one of those things of whether or not it's morally right or morally wrong, but we have free will to make the morally wrong decision. But that doesn't mean that it's the best decision.
Absolutely. And we seem to have seen a fair bit of this recently. Seems to be somewhat prevalent in recent times, of course, likely. Seen a number of articles circulating in the past few years, mentioning sort of a philosophy called the victim mentality. Again, that's sort of what we're talking about here again, not necessarily embracing free will, but rather that it's a bit of an illusion that, again, the cards are stacked, the tables are turned against us, and that things simply happen to us. And Jake, I, for one, am not part of the victim mentality school of thought, as it were.
Yeah, I can't necessarily say that as well. And so, certainly, quite a few interesting questions to start us off here on this new uh, section of questions, and we will be continuing that in the weeks to come. But that does wrap up things for tonight.
Absolutely. Well, we thank you all again for tuning in. So until next time,
I'm Jacob Falmer.
and I'm Isaac Hedges, host of What in the World. From all of us at What in the World and Great World Productions, good night and God bless.